Welcome back to Absolute Nianema, the series about all things cinema and art nights, and today we're doing another subclass review because Hyperglyph keeps doing cool things to the subclasses I like and makes me want to line up these videos of their events, which I then completely fucking miss. And today we're talking about a very cool subclass.
戦術家
Well, yes, but I already did a mini-series about them. Let's think of a different subclass.
人形版
Okay, good as well, but think more neglected.
チェーンメディック
What? No, they have monster now. The answer is actually art protectors.
でも彼らはかっこよくない
So anyway, I like art protectors. They are a neat subclass in a pretty neat class group, and they are also severely neglected by Hyperglyph, as not only they are the oldest subclass in the game without their module, which they're fixing in Half Annie, and they also went the longest before getting their first 6-star in the addition of Hoshiguma Ulta, which feels like a dick punch to make the long-awaited 6-star member a limited unit. Anyway, art protectors are cool, and I want to talk about them to celebrate the release of another Minosknights member with Hoshi Ulta. So my favorite niche now has 2 banger art defenders in it, 3 if you're a coper like me and who thinks Nian S1 counts as one. So what makes an art protector stand out? Well, they turn their physical damage into arts damage when the skill is active. Well, that, and they get a 15 res as part of their design, since they're supposed to be able to tank arts damage as well as being arts DPSs. This on paper is cool, but then you remember that they will still get out DPS by any other class that does arts damage. Even if we boil them down to art DPS blockers, they still need to compete with art guards, who know, the class that has fucking Serta. And I guess we can also add Primal Guards who have the Endringer. And Shapercasters, because they summon blockers while doing arts damage. And, well, they have Ebelana, which... Yeah. Anyway, also it doesn't help that both Arts Guards and Shapercasters got their modules as well, which widen the gap between the two, although by the time you see this, Art Defenders will have their modules from Half Annie, but we won't be talking about those modules until Half Annie, because the length of this script is daunting enough. Anyway, back on topic, Art Protectors still have their tankier stats and innately better res stats over normal defenders at least, but some of the Art Protectors feel like they were designed to be DPSs first, tanks second, so due to their skills and talents are, well, designed like that. So they will be judged on that by the community, which is why Art Guards fucking canalize most of their use cases. That said, I will gladly use them over Arts Guards because I am an artist who loves whack units. That's why I have a Cliff Heart built despite having Gladia. I'm going to sit here and talk about why you should use Art Protectors for the next hour and you will like it. Don't worry, this won't be an hour long. I hope at least. We're just going to sit here and talk about all the members and nothing else. So let's start with... Dernar is our only 4-star member of the group, with the others being 5 stars before they added Hoshi, and because of that I'm expecting to spend very little time with her. Like I said, with Beanstalk and Tacticians new, 4 stars by design is the class identity boiled down to its bare bones, so it can be an entry point to the class. Now, unlike Beanstalk, Diana is the muse of her class. She's more of a Jessica, has no use cases once you move up a rarity. Diana has nothing really going for her. Her talent is a simple attack and defense boost, her S1 is a simple attack boost, and her S2 is the same attack boost, but now she can hit enemies up to her block count. She's just a tanky arts DPS who gets outdone by everyone else. And the only reason why you would use her is because you like Dernar or you are a sadist. Thankfully, I'm the former. And, well, I really regret getting those S2 masteries though. At M3, it's an 80% attack boost with 25 SP costs. That should be fine, but they decided they hated her and made it defensive recovery, which I hate so much. Defensive recovery is okay in some cases, and those cases are because they have a low SP cost or a worthwhile payoff for their effectively longer charge time. Dernar S2 is not worth the longer charge time, and her SP cost is still somehow 25 at M3. That's 25 fucking hits they have to take before they can use their kinda mediocre skill. Yes, it does get better once you deploy a Blemish Iron, so it doubles as offensive recovery, but an Arts Protector, we will discuss later in this video, also has defensive recovery on their DPS skill, and that has a 20 SP cost at M3, better DPS potential, and has use cases in terms of being, outside of being a tanky arts DPS. I love my Dernar, but I cannot defend her. She's objectively bad, and you shouldn't build her. That said, I will personally continue to use her for the same reason why I use my Shiriki over my Meteorite. I like their fashion sense. Well, maybe not in that skin though. Asbestos, my beloved. This here is why I love this subclass. Silly brash girls who will fan the me to shreds. Anyway, she's an interesting case because she leans a bit into the defensive side of the group while still having skills focused on offensive uses. Like, her talent gives her an extra 10 plus 10 res, just like Cerny, while also turning any instance of arts damage into free SP. In other words, it's defensive recovery, but less stupid. This is what I would argue is the factor that leans her into the defensive side of the class, as it charges her skills faster for doing her role. Her S1 further reinforces this role with Resilient mode, letting her dodge the next instance of arts damage, and reduces all incoming arts damage by 20% at skill level 7, 30% if you chase the M3. This makes her ideal for situations with high amounts of arts damage flying around, because she already has 25 base res from her stats and talent. And remember, res works with percentages, not flats. So instead of reducing arts damage by a flat 25, it's reducing it by 25%, which just means less damage overall. So adding a further 30% is pretty good on top of that. That said, while I think it's worth chasing masteries on this skill, well, if you're only looking to build Asbestos for this skill, I would recommend Matterhorn for this situation. While he is just a protector, his E2 gives him a flat 25, res, but for the cost of a level 3 4-star module, he gets to go up to 20% res. Impressive, but what really makes it impressive is that with M3 on his S2, he doubles this to 40 res, on top of getting other really good defensive stats. If that doesn't do it for you, he's also cheaper to raise option compared to Asbestos, and his module is the highly valuable Mod Y, making him your cheapest option in situations where you need a 4 block. You are giving up DPS you would gain from Asbestos, but S1 isn't Asbestos DPS skill, so it doesn't really matter. I think if you're only interested in a arts tank, Matterhorn will serve you greatly in this niche, but if you're looking to make use of the Asbestos S2 as well, then you should just build Asbestos, as it's more bang for your buck at that point. So S2 is obviously the skill I care about, and you should care about as well, since it leans her into the more offensive DPS side. Thermal Power mode makes her attack slightly slower, but she does gain 60% attack, 45% defense, expands her range to spread shooter range, and now she can do AoE damage. This is also not documented in the skill description, but S2 also lets her target air. Basically, with S2, you got a tanky AoE arts caster that lasts for 46 seconds, but I would recommend chasing the M3 on the skill, or at least M1. M1 has a breakpoint where she gains an extra tile range, which comes handy when you need it. But if we're doing the full mastery, your attack boost is 90%, your defense boost is 60%, while reducing the cost of the skill from 54 to 50, and now the skill itself now lasts 50 fucking seconds. 50 seconds is a long downtime for a skill, but if you're using her in the situation where she's under fire by arts damage, it does even out, and should realistically bring it down to, 30-second downtime maybe even higher. Also, fun fact from my Whiplash video that may or may not be out, probably definitely not. With Whiplash S1 and 3, she can nearly nullify the downside of the skill. Asbestos increased attack intervals is a flat 0.4 across all skill levels, while in her S2 state, Whiplash in this situation should bring this down to 0.1 increase, making this increase barely noticeable now. The more you know. Now, before I close this segment, we should probably mention the other non-member of the subclass that might as well be Liscam. And, well, she's here because, well, not only her S2 dealt arts damage, but because she shares some interesting parallels with Asbestos. Like, aside from being defenders who do arts damage, they both have an S1 that focuses on defensive buffs, an S2 with an increased range, and a talent based around rewarding SP for doing their jobs. Where Liscam differs from Asbestos is the fact that her talent is a chance that rewards SP to adjacent allies. Her S2 is more linear range while giving her a stun, and her S1 isn't specialized into surviving arts damage specifically. On paper, Liscam looks better, especially once we account for the fact that she has the mod X for Sentinels, which adds invisible to her use cases. But I still would rather prefer Asbestos. It's just a me thing, but if I want a defender that does arts damage, I'll use the class that does it by design. If I want to give SP, I can just use Asbestos, a Quercus, or Apple Tea Sauce for that. And if I want camo reveal, Tsukinogi. Yes, my Ajura bias is showing again, but Asbestos is cool, and honestly a great middle ground option for the class, as she fits into the dual role of an arts tank and a tanky arts DPS. Liscam, on the other hand, feels just like a prototype of what Asbestos is, and while I respect that, I would prefer the finished product in this case. Some may say she's unfocused, but I think she's cool and worth the M6. You might think she's dated, but I think a jack of all trades like her makes her a highly valued pick with good return on investment, especially in IS, because this is me, woman who will suck IS3's dick any chance she gets. Of course, I will value a pick that is super efficient on hope costs. Anyway, Asbestos good, get an Asbestos so she can be best buddies with your Magellan that you also don't have because no one uses summoners. Shalem is like way too good to be a welfare if I'm allowed to be real for a second. He already got a really good talent and an even better IS2 Pacific talent, but for his skill selections, he was allowed to steal the SGs of his predecessors and improve on them, and he gets to do this while being a free-to-play option for players. I mean, sure, Donut is also free-to-play, and same with Cerny, which really says something about how much Hypegriff hates the subclass where 3 of their members are relegated to welfare status. But I think Shalem is the best of the lot. Like, let's start with his non-Pacific talent. Is, well, presuming full pot because of welfare, a 25% chance to apply a 3-second 25% res shred, which is quite good odds once you realize his skills are about attacking fast, giving him more chances to roll that dice. You also have to remember that 25% shred is a lot, and makes him a really good pairing of any other arts DPS, giving him a niche as a tanky arts DPS debuffer. He really is such a shad, and to think he's based on the person who got John the Baptist killed. Yeah, he's based on Salom from the play Salom, that does have a very old film adaptation. This is why I put him in my Cinema Night squad for this. Nothing more. Well, there's nothing more keynote than killing famous religious figures. Also, he gets cut by playwright in Act or Die's conclusion, so there's that too. So, what's his ways of applying res shred fast and quickly? Well, S1 is your straight upgrade to Donut S2. Yeah, he doesn't get the attack boost, but hear me out. Auto recovery. That is all. Look, he gets a 35% attack interval reduction at skill level 7 with 30% HP bonus. At M3, it's 45% reduction with a 50% bonus. This plays more into his talent while letting him stay as a tinky boy. I still like this more over Donut SG purely because defensive recovery on any unit that isn't a solo laner or have a low charge cost is a bad skill, which is just basically leaves us with Modrock S2. So, in other words, if you're not Modrock S2, stay the fuck out of my sight. Not you, though, Shaman S2, you can say. You too, Bonashine, you're goated as always. And you penitently get a pass for being a solo laner. Anyway, Shalem S2, Carnival of I can't fucking say it. Self-immolation is very simple and fun. At the cost of losing 5% of his HP every second, he gets spread shooter range and starts firing fireballs in bursts of 6 at random targets in range at reduced attack percentages. Also, it hits air, because why not? At skill level 7, it's, 65% attack, but with M3 it's 80%. So I would presume Mastery's on the skill if I was you. It's like Kata S1, terrible value against multiple targets, but highly valuable in single target DPS. I mean, sure, if the goal is to gamble on multiple targets for the res shred, be my guest. But I think for multi-target res shred, S1 wins in those situations. S2 is definitely more geared for single target DPS, and it is really risky gamble. Like, he's losing a lot of HP per second, meaning even with a healer, if he's under duress, he might just die while casting it, and it is defensive recovery, so it might take a while for him to wind it up, even with Blemishine holding his hand. It's not bad as Dernar, though, at least. Like, Skill of Zone is a charge of 26 XP, and then M3's 20% is like 20 SP, which is more tolerable than Dernar's 25 at M3, and the payoff is better. Still hate how long it is, but damn, he does shred. So you're probably thinking right now, what's the catch? You have pumped this man up so much, there has to be a downside. But guess what? There isn't. I genuinely think he's great and has a versatile role as a tanky arts damage amper, or as a powerful single target arts DPS, and this comes at the cost of playing one of the worst ISs. I hate the castle so much, but I'm saying this as someone who loves ISV, so once again, I have no rights. I do think I have the right to say that if you want to build an arts protector in this class, you build Shaylin. I think out of the 5 members, he will provide you the most bang for your buck, mainly because he's a welfare, so he doesn't cost you any bucks. Yeah, he isn't a good arts tank compared to Asbestos, but I think for what he does bring to the table as an offensive option in the class, and especially as an easier to obtain option compared to Asbestos, he's worth the effort. Ugh, Cerny. Look, I don't hate this guy, I just find him terribly disinteresting personality-wise. He's very much the very boring kind of a creative, a slightly uptight genius that sandblasts any fun quirks off himself, leaving nothing for me to latch onto. Like, Bo is just a nice guy who's really good with piano, and that's just really fucking boring, which makes him a great fit for his kit. Cerny is the definition of a defensive arts predator, and he does it in the most uninteresting way possible. Well, for the class at least, I still think it's pretty interesting in comparison to a lot of other operators in this game. One way you know a lot. Some. Definitely some, yeah. We'll give him that. His talent gives him innate plus 10 res, we saw in Asbestos, and the second part of the talent lets him deal 85% of his attack stat on attackers who hit him with arts damage. That's right, he has Thorns for a talent, but only works on arts damage. He's the arts version of S2 Hoshi, and I love Hoshi, but S2 is so boring in comparison to her S3. Put down a character and let them exist among the chaos of the battlefield. To his credit, he's more than the Yan side of Thorns, where you need to activate their skill to get more value out of it, so there is interactivity. But still, he just sits there most of the time, unbothered, moisturized, in his own lane. We should probably talk skills, so I'm going to skip over to S2, because S1's kind of meh. It's just a generic attack boost that just increases his res stat. Like, at skill level 7, it's 50% and 80% respectively, with M3 making 80% and 100%. It has a longer downtime compared to S2, and doesn't synergize with his talent that much, so I would say skip it. S2 is neat, though, because it gives him, well, it turns him into a lightning rod. Meisterwork? No, it's Meisterwork. God, I can feel the German in me rising there. Gives me bonus. Gives him bonus max HP and increased torment level and turns every single attack. He gets into bonus attack with an extra cap. Well, a max cap on the amount of stacks during this duration. At the end of the duration, though, he then nukes his surrounding tiles with arts damage. At like skill level 7, we're looking at 70% bonus to the HP, each stack being worth 24% attack each, and he nukes with a 190% modifier, M3 pushing those numbers to 100%, 30%, and 250% respectively. Also, max stacks cap has a flat cap at 10 across all skill levels. By itself, it's already pretty good since that's huge numbers we're hitting if he's being constantly hit. So he has good nuke potential, but with his talent, well, this skill increases his attack with each attack. It also means his passive performance damage also scales with that talent. This makes him very unique among the few operators that act like lightning rolls, as he becomes a high DPS tank against ranged arts damage dealers who can still deal damage to close ranged options with his nuke. Also, for some reason, his nuke hits air, which I'm starting to think is a running trend that just exists to bully Donar. I low-key don't know what else to say here because Sony is just wunderbar at his one job, especially considering he doesn't have any real competition in his niche, unlike Donar and Asbestos. I would say he should be on the build list of all players, as there are times where you will need an arse tank like him. Although I haven't built him because he just bores me so fucking stiff with his personality, you could use me to whack a guy. Like, sure, Mahon can crawl back his way here for the sake of the discussion, since he can take arms damage better, but Sony has the performance talent and the nuke to pair with it, so yeah, not worth it. You know what? If I have to do a comparison, I want to bring up baseline. No, they aren't comparable, but I'm gonna be real, this is less comparison and more cool side companion for a certain situation. Like, let's say you're in a situation where you're dealing with enemies that deal AoE arts damage, and you are using Sony as a lightning rod, but he ends up being near your other units and is getting hit they're getting hit by the splash. Well, baseline is a cool companion, as with S2, he can not only heal units, but give them a barrier that soaks up arts damage. He also gets increased res stats, because why not? I wouldn't compare him to any of the Arts Protectors, since he lacks the DPS part of an Arts Protector, but I think he's a cool companion that's worth building if you want to go all in with Arts Protectors, or just even the pairing with Sony. I'm sure he appreciates even having even more survivability, since, he's such a nice and boring person. Okay, this is going to be the longest segment of the video. Hoshiguma the Breacher is our latest member of the class, and slots into Minosknights as well due to Hoshi's involvement in Ancient Forge, and she's definitely interesting. It feels like she takes notes more from Shalem and Sony, which I guess is the path they want to go down, while edging us into Juggernaut territory to help her stand out among the class. You can actually argue it started with Asbestos, since she was rewarded for taking on arts damage of her talent, but with Shalem's HP lost class on S2, and Sony being a lightning rod for arts damage, you can see how Hoshi continues what they started in her talents and skills, becoming an arts tank DPS who wants to be taking the heat off everyone else. Her S3 achieves that the best, I feel, but on the other hand, her S1, S2 gives, modern takes on old Hoshi as well, because I want you to understand why she's the perfect 6-star for this group of misfits. Let's start on her actual selling point. Karmic Flame, because, yeah, that's a lot of words. This first talent effectively just lets her become a Juggernaut, where she enters an undying state when below 0 HP and will continue to take more accumulated damage. If she doesn't take damage for 5 seconds though, she will start healing 5% HP per second, and she will exit this state once, she's above 0 HP. This sounds good already, but then you find out what her cap is for accumulated damage before she dies, which is 200% of her max HP. I know that sounds like a lot, but 200% is really not selling how fucking huge this is. At max level E2, she has 3,351 max HP before any other buffs. At 200%, that is 6,702 HP. So in total, she effectively has 10,253 effective HP on her hands once you add her accumulated damage pool to her actual HP pool. For comparison, Ling's S3 dragons with Mod Y at 3 and upgrade to the Big Dragon is 7,714 HP. We're living in a world where Hoshiguma is a better role than Ling's big dragons. We have gone full fucking circle, and I love it. I love this talent, and I wish her premier skill SV worked better with it. But they had to balance the SV, so you ended up having less synergy with that skill, but who fucking cares? This talent makes the whole operator worth it, in my opinion. The fact is effectively a modern-day update on Hoshi's damage ignore talent by removing the chance and building something actually interesting around it. Well, it's what makes it fun to me. It also works with her second talent, which gives her 50 res and 35% attack, where she reaches the max of the threshold of 30%. Putting the attack aside, 50 res is so fucking gross because she already has a base res of 15, so she effectively has 65 res for just existing. That's 65% arts damage reduction. She's literally the definition of an arts tank, and she only gets better from here. Now, what I like about Hoshi's Beach's skill design is that not only is a smorgasbord of different SP recoveries, but her S1 and S2 are just upgraded versions of Hoshi's S2 and S3 respectively, while her SV gets to be something new and flashy as we would expect from a 6-star operator. After all, why bother fixing it if it's not broken? Honestly, it just fits into this idea that Hoshi Breacher is just a modern day update of the original Hoshi, which I really like. Let's start with S1, Unwholesome Karma, which is, yes, defensive recovery, but unlimited duration and a low SP cost, so put down your pitchforks. This isn't a Dernar situation. It's basically an arts version of Sony's talent because, yes, I do support the idea of taking this plank of wood to the back of the shed and nailing him to it with a nail gun. In fact, it's better than both original Hoshi S2 and Sony's talent because what the fuck are these modifiers? Like, let's be generous and cap Breacher's S1 to skill 7 and let original Hoshi's S2 have M3 because I'm not unnailing Sony for this comparison. OG Hoshi S2 M3 has a 30% defense boost and does 100% of her damage as Thorns. In comparison, skill level 7 Hoshi Breacher is giving us both a 55% to both defense and attack, and now the Thorns is now 130% for attack. Without masteries or even her second talent as a modifier, Hoshi Breacher has outdone OG Hoshi in its main roles, with something extra as well, leaving the only use case for OG Hoshi being her mod Y. Truly, this is the privilege of being a limited unit. Also helps that she benefits from 6 years of design experience and the ever-growth need to power creep. But I don't really mind. It's not just because she's only power creeping herself in this case. This Hoshi already set the stage with a big banner that says she's only improving on herself, with her talents being modern iterations of her old ones, so it makes sense that she will have a modern day equivalent of her most iconic skill. Something that, is continued with her S2 as well. Her S2, Beginningless Ignorance, takes her SV, attaches a bunch of improvements, and gives it back to Alice with an offensive recharge because it's being its main downside now. These improvements also aim to make sure that you don't need or want Modrock anymore. Basically, it's offensive recharge skill that spins the big ass shuriken shield she carries around, where it will now slow down when it's hitting an enemy, inflicting a slow and heal it for a percentage of the damage it deals. Say with me now, that's just better Modrock S2, and you would be right. But there's differences between the skills here. Like first, Modrock S2 is faster, has a stun instead of a slow, and since its defense recovery has potential to be up more often than Hoshi's S2. And also it can be varied to a degree by best girl, so she still has her upsides in comparison. That said, Modrock has been more power creeped by the enemies rather than fellow operators, and considering we have an option that has the potential for a higher degree of survivability and can actually be healed through conventional means, I don't blame Hoshi Breacher owners wanting to replace Modrock with her. If you ask me, this is definitely more of a two cake situation. Plus, Modrock has a sledgehammer, so she's irreplaceable in my heart already. Now for the truly only unique skill in her lineup, Hell itself is certainly a choice for a name, because holy, this is a hell for Hoshiguma and the enemies caught in her range. She basically gets a domain expansion level of range upon activation and gains a huge stack of health, HP, and the ability to hit multiple enemies at once, twice, each per attack, and that isn't even the main draw of the skill. If you choose to manually deactivate the skill for 11 seconds, she will become unkillable because apparently she isn't, enough of a walking brick showers before, and now her attacks hit quadruple times now, and rejects any fail damage applied to enemies in her range, or allies in her range, to herself, but she will automatically retreat after those 11 seconds. That's a lot of text for a skill that can effectively be summed up as Twilight 2, the Hell in the Cell, because she does Soda SV, but as a tank, so slightly less nuke, and a focus on helping everyone else survive the nuke. I really don't think it's worth talking stats of the skill, because what the skill does already merits its usage, so that any stats it does get is just a bonus. If anything, I guess it's worth the M1 at least as a breakpoint, because it lets her hit 3 enemies at once instead of 2, but once again it's just so ridiculous on paper. You use it out of merit and spectacle. The only reason to not use this skill is if you're like FK skills, which is me. I use S2 a lot because brain off, Beyblade, let it rip. As a fun fact for the end of this segment, she can hit air with this skill. I am convinced that is just to make sure Donar has no uses, as that's how, what, 4 members of this class that can hit air and she can't? I think the only way this gets funnier is they give us Donar Alter and she's still an Arts Defender and she still can't hit fucking air. Oh, that was a long video and one that was way too long to finish and get out. Almost makes me never want to do a class-based video ever again. Okay, that's Art Defenders, a class I really like, despite the fact I haven't really invested a lot of resources into them yet, especially Sony. Like, my love for this class began with Asbestos, and really was just carried by her until Hoshi Bleacher came out. Like, yeah, I love Donar just by how shit she is. I love the overall just usefulness of Shalem, who is just way too much value for welfare. My words are failing me right now, I do apologize. And how even Sony's game plan is a simple yet effective one for a plank of wood like him. It's a cool class that I feel like before Hoshiguma Preacher was overlooked. Well, the class overall was overlooked by the player base due to arts fighters and having similar performing units and other defender branches, so I'm glad that Hoshiguma exists now to right that wrong. But okay, we got an elephant in the room to address. Where's the modules? Well, I kind of want to get my hands on them first before I discuss them, so I think that will be a separate video later down the line. This is definitely not me trying to avoid bloating this video even more. Look, if everything goes right, we'll talk about the modules when they release for 6.5 Annie, and if not, you guys can wait at least 6 more months for that. Like, look, you survived waiting for this. I think you'll survive another wait. Anyway, that's basically all I got to say on topics, so we'll go back to your irregularly scheduled videos while I piece together my next big video. But just remember, whatever you do, don't build your donor.